Hello everyone, I'm Rika Kumala Dewi, a researcher from the SMERU Research Institute. I would like to present analysis on labor market exclusion in Indonesia with a particular focus on persons with disabilities. In economic theories, we know that access to employment should be justified based on productivity, not based on economically irrelevant indicators such as disability status. However, many reports and news in Indonesia indicates that disabled persons do find difficulties in accessing job market. Nationally, the representative data also tells the same story. The data indicates that labor market outcomes of disabled persons are left behind. Is there enough evidence to say that there is labor market exclusion of persons with disabilities in Indonesia? If yes, what factors are hindering or promoting it? This is what we are going to find out in our analysis. To answer these questions, we use SUSENA's 2018, a nationally representative socioeconomic data in Indonesia. We analyze it using logistic regression. We use 4 dependent variables. All of those are binary variables at individual level. Our first variable is participation in labor force. When an individual participates in labor force, we mark it as 1. Our second dependent variable is their employment status, whether they're employed or unemployed. We mark 1 for those who are unemployed. Our third dependent variable is among those who are employed. We construct a variable whether they are working as employees in formal sector or working as self-employed or having casual worker. We mark 1 for those who are working as formal employees. Then we have an indicator on discouraged feeling of those who enter labor market. This is to capture the severity of labor market exclusion of persons with disabilities in Indonesia. And this is our independent variable. Based on socio-ecological framework, we classify our independent variables into individual characteristics, household characteristics, environmental or contextual factors, and policy factors. To answer the first questions, is there labor market exclusions for persons with disabilities in Indonesia? We include both disabled and non-disabled observations in this analysis. And then we also include all independent variables identified based on socio-ecological framework. But among those variables, our main variables of interest is actually only the disability status. When disability status is significantly correlated with the 4 labor market outcomes, then we can say that yes, there is exclusion. This is our logic estimation. This is the marginal effect of disability status on labor market outcomes. To answer whether there is labor market exclusion or not in Indonesia, our main variable of interest is the disability status. From this figure, we can say that disabled persons have lower probability to enter labor market. When they enter labor market, they tend to have higher probability to be unemployed and lower probability to be employed in formal sector. In other words, being disabled is associated with higher probability to be excluded from labor market. Then yes, there is labor market exclusion in Indonesia. Being disabled associated with larger probability to feel discouraged in labor market. Their probability to be discouraged is about 0.4 percentage point larger than non-disabled one. What are factors that are hindering or promoting labor market exclusions of persons with disabilities? To answer the second question, we include only disabled observations into our regressions. Our main variables of interest is The full list of variables identifies based on socio-ecological framework. We conduct regressions on 4 dependent variables of labor market outcomes, and then for each labor market outcomes, we conduct separate estimation across different gender, education level, and place of living. We do this to capture the unique experience of exclusions among disabled persons in labor market. In total, we have 24 estimations to scrutinize the determinants of labor market exclusions in Indonesia. We summarize the regression results in this table. We use minus signs to indicate lower probability and plus signs to indicate higher probability of our independent variables to affect dependent variables. This is the individuals and household characteristics that are significant to influence labor market exclusions of disabled persons in Indonesia. First, severe disability status and number of functional limitations. Those having severe disabilities and having many functional difficulties tend to have a lower chance to enter labor market than those having light disabilities and experiencing single functional limitations. When those individuals enter labor market, they are having higher probability to be unemployed. Female with disability have lower probability to enter labor market if we compare it with the male counterpart. When they enter labor market, they also have lower probability to be employed in the formal sector. Comparing the experience of exclusion across different individual characteristics, we find that disabled female with a low education level excluded the most in labor market. Person with disability in Indonesia is actually have supply side constraints. Most of them have low education level. About 77% of disabled persons in Indonesia only graduated from elementary school. Low education levels leads to lower probability to enter labor market, lower probability to be recruited as employee in formal sector, and higher probability to be discouraged. Based on these findings, improving access to education is not only beneficial for increasing disabled persons' access to labor market, but also crucial to achieve gender equity in labor market. In addition, it is also beneficial to increase welfare. The environmental factors indicate the situations of socioeconomic atmospheres which support persons with disabilities to access labor market. Disabled persons living in high unemployment rate districts tend to be discouraged to enter labor market. When they enter labor market, they are more likely to be unemployed. GDP per capita indicates the size of the economy. Workers living in richer regions have higher probability to be recruited as employees in formal sector. Those having access to credit are more likely to be self-employed, and having access to credit make their psychological well-being better. Access to training center increase their probability to employed and to be recruited as employees in formal sector. What are the policy implications? Vocational training are important to increase labor market inclusions of disabled persons. Since there are labor market constraints to recruit disabled persons as employee, opening their access to credit will be an alternative policy to improve their well-being and to reduce unemployment rate. Then, regarding policy factors, we include minimum wage policy and district regulations which protect persons with disabilities' right to obtain job. Regarding minimum wage, we find no correlation with a probability to enter labor market and to be employed in formal sector. Regarding the disability regulations at district level, out of 500 districts in Indonesia, only less than 20 districts that have regulations protecting employment rights of persons with disabilities. Even though only few districts have regulation protecting employment rights of persons with disabilities, its correlation is positive with the probability of disabled to be recruited in formal sector, indicating that there is a potential for improving job access of disabled persons when we promote district governments to acknowledge the same rights of persons with disability and non-disabled one in labor market. In conclusions, in Indonesia, persons with disability are excluded. Their probability to be excluded is higher among severe disability status and among those with multiple functional limitations. Key factors of labor market inclusions among disabled persons are gender, educational level, access to credit, access to training center, and disability regulations. Thank you.